Everybody, welcome to Trading Caps exclusive analysis. Good to be back in front of the charts here, doing another free video discussing natural gas, the Widowmaker, and what type of price action is unfolding. Obviously, over the last 3 days, Nat Gas has had a pretty tremendous bounce off of the lows, a beautiful 3-bar surge. And what's interesting about this pattern is obviously everyone can see this trend line pivot low to pivot low, and you had this technical breakdown here in Nat Gas. Now, the thing about this technical breakdown is this could be a failed bearish move. And you've probably heard the saying around Wall Street. If you haven't, the saying goes, the biggest move comes from failed patterns. So therefore, if this is a failed bearish breakdown, meaning the bears tried taking Nat Gas, tried breaking it down, and the bulls were able to resist and push Nat Gas back up, this could become a very, very bullish pattern in the near term. So again, since this is a failed bearish pattern, often you get a very, very big bull move. So I'm actually well positioned in Nat Gas with my members. We've been accumulating UNG on the long side with a couple different entries now. And as of today, we are in the money. My average is sitting around 1381 in UNG. And I just love this long-term chart of UNG. I mean, buying at these levels, extremely, extremely depressed levels, is something I love to do for Nat Gas. And I do think Nat Gas is probably going to be retesting. There's this really, really interesting trend line where I think at the minimum, Nat Gas is going to push back up to. And if you connect all of these little pivot highs, you can see that that puts us maybe around 18 bucks on UNG. So if UNG were to push to $18 from here, that would be a pretty sizable move. You know, you're talking about maybe a 25, 26% rally from current price action. So you can see that there's a lot of leverage in the system. If people are trading Boyle, that's obviously times 2. If you're short KOLD, that's obviously times 3. But nevertheless, a beautiful, beautiful rounding formation is starting to occur in natural gas. I've also been accumulating not only the underlying commodity, but also taking exposure in some of the equity positions. And what I'm actually seeing here in natural gas, if we just simply remove this little previous inverse that failed, we're actually now forming potentially another inverse head and shoulder. So how would we form the right shoulder? Well, you would actually get a check back to support and then form a little bit of a rounding right shoulder here that could lead to an eventual breakout to the upside. So hypothetically speaking, let's say Nat Gas pulls back and tests, say 206, maybe even 201 on the deep side. That would give us a beautiful potential mini right shoulder to trade against. And how we would observe the neckline is simply drawing it from this high pivot. Now, mind you, we have not got a right shoulder yet. So in order to develop that right shoulder, we should get a pullback and then a continuation breakout to the upside. But if this turns into a mini inverse head and shoulders, take a look at the pattern that we have here. That's roughly about a 2.57 move in Nat Gas. That takes us right back to this gap fill, right back to this previous pivot zone. If we throw in a Fibonacci retrace from this high all the way down to the low, take a look at that, kind of right into that 50% retrace zone. So I'm very, very, I shouldn't say confident, but I think that there's a very likely probability that Nat Gas sees a touch of a pullback and then a bigger continuation move to the upside. So again, I have been accumulating Nat Gas with my members, and I do think that there's going to be more upside in this underlying commodity. Even a name like AR, which has been extremely depressed, having a stunning day today, up 5.34%. Obviously, the weekly chart not looking too good, but you've back tested now this Fibonacci retrace from this high down to this low. You had that breakout, which took you right into that 50% retrace, and now you're back testing that first Fibonacci level on a weekly basis. And you can see on a weekly chart, you pierced it, gap down. Now the bulls are trying to recapture that. So I think at the end of the week, if we close back above this 2684 in AR, that's a very, very bullish sign from my perspective. Even a name like EQT, obviously looking extremely bearish. You had a falling wedge pattern that actually failed here, but this is a name that is still into a ton of support. And believe it or not, this could still be forming a very large weekly inverse head and shoulders, okay? So you really don't want to lose this pivot low sitting around 2820. But if this turns into a big weekly inverse head and shoulders, if we look at the underlying commodity again, we still have that potential that Nat Gas could also be putting in that much, much, much larger weekly inverse head and shoulders pattern. How would you be observed? It would be observed like this. So imagine this turns into that weekly inverse head and shoulders that a lot of people have been trying to play and buy. that would yield quite a substantial up move. Even from here, just to the neckline's a really, really decent trade. But imagine we get this breakout on the long-term side from this neckline, say in a couple weeks or a few months. That could push us back up to 460, and I still had a very, very strong upside target for nat gas, but obviously in the last several weeks, it has been annihilated and crushed to the upside when it did confirm this failed breakout. So now you see this example. Okay, I'm gonna discuss this failed move, right? So notice how we had a failed move over here, where nat gas bulls tried to break it out of this downsloping trend line. That was a big failure of a bullish move. So the bullish breakout failed, and look at the torrential downpour that we got. Well, now we have almost that exact opposite, which I discussed earlier in the video. And if we simply draw it like this again, this little trend line through there, you can see that nat gas had a major, major technical breakdown, and now that breakdown is appearing to potentially fail. So I do think that as long as nat gas remains above this pivot low, I think we have a very, very defined stop to trade against, and I am actually looking to see more bullish upside. Hopefully this analysis helped. Please give it a like down below, and we will see you on the charts a little bit later.